They're killing Hindus in Pahalgam and Christians in Benue State. World leaders need to wake up before it gets too late. But they're all just sleeping soundly amid the rising tide of hate. It's This Week in Jihad, ladies and gentlemen. We got David Wood with us here today. David, good afternoon, good morning, good evening.
How's it going, Robert? I will be, for the next probably 60 seconds, be sending out this link on various platforms and stuff. So don't mind me if you see me typing here.
David, I understand. I appreciate it. And thank you. And thank you for being here. As always, it is a rare thing when someone of your stature comes on to This Week in Jihad. As a matter of fact, it only happens about once a week. So, we have here, of course, the big news is from Jammu and Kashmir in India, from the tourist city of Pahalgam. Forgive me if I am not saying that correctly. And in Pahalgam, there were 28 people killed. And what happened, David, was the terrorists, the jihadis who were Lashkar-e-Taiba jihadis, apparently affiliated with Pakistan, they came into Kashmir and they came to this gathering of tourists who were mostly Hindus, and they started immediately to separate the Hindus from the Muslims. The Muslims they let go, and the Hindus they murdered. They asked the people there to recite the various Islamic professions of faith, not just there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, but other statements of allegiance to Allah and Islam. And if they could not, they would be killed. They pulled down men's pants to check if they were circumcised, as Muslims tend to be circumcised, or almost universally are, while Hindus do not practice circumcision, and they would kill those who were not. This was clearly then a targeted jihad attack by the Army of the Righteous, that's what Lashkar-e-Taiba means, in order to strike terror in the enemies of Allah, as it is commanded in the Quran. And consequently, this is something that, although we have seen many terror attacks of this kind over the years that we've been doing this show, and we have seen many of them be ignored, this one, for various reasons, is getting a great deal of world attention. The President of the United States wrote about it, and others, and it seems as if somehow this is drawing attention to the fact of the jihad attack, although it must be noted that, of course, nobody's calling it a jihad attack. Many people are saying that the terrorists arrived in the area and started firing indiscriminately, and are not reporting at all about how they separated the Hindus from the Muslims and killed only the Hindus. But that in itself is no surprise that this would be reported this way, is it?
No, that's not surprising at all. That's pretty standard. But Robert, I have to. Every one of these terrorist attacks, it always brings back memories of previous terrorist attacks, where people in completely different contexts, on completely different continents, somehow have the exact same idea about what they're supposed to do. So normally we point this out, like how is it that all these people on completely different continents who speak completely different languages all somehow misinterpret Islam in exactly the same way? So there we're just talking about general things like, where do they come up with the idea that you can treat women this way and that you should terrorize unbelievers in this way and so on. But here, even more specific, where they're saying they're going around to people, and sometimes you can't tell who's a Muslim and who's not a Muslim. And so what do? You give them a little pop quiz. Let's find out if you're actually a Muslim. So let me ask you some questions here. What's the Shahada? Explain that to me, and so on. But I remember that from the Nairobi Mall massacre in Kenya, where jihadis showed up to a mall and had people sitting on the floor, and were going around, and people were, of course, lots of people, of course, were saying, "No, I'm a Muslim," and they would go around and they would quiz everyone. They would quiz everyone on whether they could recite various things. Can you recite Surat Al-Fatiha? What's the Shahada, and so on. And then if you couldn't, they would kill you. And it's just interesting. Here you have, so think about that. You've got Africa, just completely different culture from India. And yet you have these devout followers of Muhammad coming up with the same exact methodologies on distinguishing who they're supposed to kill from who they're not supposed to kill. And we're supposed to think that it's just random. They're all crazy people, and all religions have their extremists.
Yeah, David, I got more on this. You said Africa and you said India. So I'll call you Africa and India and raise you Minnesota, where in St. Cloud, Minnesota, in September 2016, a Muslim named Dahir Adan went to the St. Cloud shopping mall. And he asked people at the mall if they were Muslim or Christian. And he stabbed 8 people who said they were not Muslim but Christian. He didn't stab any Muslims. That was St. Cloud, Minnesota in 2016. Very little publicity given there. But I have a list here at jihadwatch.org of similar incidents, and I'll just read off where they took place. These are all examples of incidents in which the jihadis asked their victims or potential victims if they were Muslim or not, asked them to recite the Fatiha or some other Islamic text, and if they could not, they would kill them. If they could, they would spare them. This happened in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in the Philippines. It happened at Nairobi's Westgate Mall, as you mentioned. It happened in Nigeria, in Bangladesh, in Kenya, in Mozambique. Most recently in 2024, it happened with Hamas when they captured an Israeli Arab doctor and asked him a series of questions about the Quran and Muhammad, and they did not kill him because he was able to answer them correctly. And so now we have the same thing happening in Jammu and Kashmir. So this is really all over the world. This has happened from the United States to the Philippines, Africa, and Asia as well.
I have to say, Robert, this could be a case for people learning to refute Islam, like an additional reason to learn to refute Islam and to learn the basics of refuting Islam. Because if they started asking us some basic questions, we'd probably do pretty well.
Yes,
right?
That is certainly true.
Yeah, if they started saying, yeah. So guys, everyone should learn to refute Islam and to refute the Quran and refute Muhammad. And that way, if jihadis ever got a gun to your head, you will be able to give some accurate knowledge about Islam, and it may actually save your life. So counter jihadists like Robert Spencer could actually save your life if you watch him faithfully. And so that's an important point. So this could actually save your lives, ladies and gentlemen, paying attention to This Week in Jihad and following Robert Spencer and so on. So as far as these guys coming up with very, very similar methodologies, just want to say, and we've talked about this in the past, there are different lines of thought here, ladies and gentlemen, and you could defend them all. It kind of comes down to the school of thought and the preferences of the particular jihadis. So notice here, you have people who will show up to an area where there could be where there will be Muslims and non-Muslims. But maybe you don't want to kill Muslims because you're not supposed to kill Muslims if you can avoid it. Unless they've, committed, like if they commit adultery or something like that, it'd be a different story. But so you have Muslims who don't want to kill fellow Muslims. And so if you show up to an area where there could be Muslims and non-Muslims, like a shopping mall or a store, a grocery store, or something like that, you try to distinguish the Muslims from the non-Muslims. And how do you do that? Well, one is to give them a little questionnaire, and we'll see if you pass. If you pass, then we'll let you slide. If you don't, then you're dead. So you have that. Showing up to an area where there could be Muslims and non-Muslims, and then you try to figure out who's Muslim and who's non-Muslim. Another way of going about that is to go to a spot where you're not going to have any serious Muslims. This is why they attack concerts. They go to concerts. There, I don't have to go in and distinguish the Muslims from the non-Muslim. If you're a Muslim and you're at a concert, you're not a good Muslim, so I don't care. You're actually you're not a real Muslim. You're a fake. And that's why they'll go to concerts, and they'll attack the Ariana Grande concert. They'll attack those kinds of places. That way they don't have to do it.
The gay bar in Florida.
In Florida. Yeah. So they're looking for places where you're not going to have any sincere Muslim. And that way you don't have to do your questionnaire. So you have those kinds of people. But then you have the people who, as long as you're targeting the unbeliever, it, it's okay if you have Muslims as collateral damage. So these are the people like attacked like the World Trade Center and things like that, or people who bomb trains. They understand that if you bomb a train, there could be collateral damage of Muslims, but they believe that it's acceptable. And they base that on Islamic teachings where that question arose. Hey, we're using catapults to attack a city, and it's pointed out, but wait a minute, there could be Muslims in there. We might hit a Muslim. Well, we're trying to take the city. That's our goal. We're trying to take the city, and we're trying to subjugate the kuffar. So that's our intention. So Allah will be okay with us if we accidentally hit some Muslims in the process. And so all these positions are justifiable. Just wanted people to understand the different methodologies and so on of the ideology that calls for our violent subjugation.
That's it. All these things people don't realize because the press never reports on it, or they quote somebody like we saw with the BBC and that story of the guy who married the 8-year-old girl in Somalia, and the BBC is actually arguing with him. And he was saying this is justifiable because Muhammad did it. And they're saying, well, we talked to Islamic scholars who disagreed.
Yeah, name them. Name them. Name one of these scholars who condemns Muhammad. Please, we'd love to hear from it.
Well, it's interesting because those guys, of course, know. And so if there were any Muslim leaders who talked to the BBC and told the BBC reporters what they wanted to hear, they were prudent enough not to give their names. And that is no surprise whatsoever. But in any case, we always hear about that these things have nothing to do whatsoever with Islam. And so it's noteworthy, it's important to note how similar these activities are all across the world, because they are actually based on what Islamic texts really teach, which is something that is never discussed in the West outside of here.
But Robert, I mean, just imagine if we had a media that just weren't complete sniveling cowards, and they accurately reported on stuff, right? Like if they reported on that BBC story out of Somalia, it would be, here's why this guy thinks this. Here's what the Quran says in Surah 65, verse 4. Here's what Muhammad did in the Hadith. This is how this guy justifies it. But you have other Muslims who think, no, it was just for that time or something like that. And, you should obey the laws of the land. And, we know more now or something like that. But just to give people an accurate understanding of this, or even when you have an attack like the one that just happened in India, to actually say, here's why these guys are going around checking who's Muslim and non-Muslim. Some Muslims believe that you should avoid as much as possible killing any Muslims. And so you question, but notice how that's different from other attacks on like concerts and so on. So they have some different ideas. But even that's different from the jihadis who would blow something up. And here's how they would justify that using their sources about using catapults. And so here's why all these people, wouldn't it be just shocking to have journalists who are trying to give people accurate information and not to spin things and steer them in a direction of ignorance? It's just,
I used to wonder. I used to be amazed 10, 15, 20 years ago that every time an establishment media reporter got involved in one of these stories, you just knew he was going to take a line that was in favor of the jihadis and whitewash jihad activity and demonize people opposed to it. You remember our friend what was his name? I don't remember him.
Niraj Warahu.
Yeah, that's
it. Niraj Warahu, something like that, yeah.
Niraj Warahu in Detroit, yeah. And guys like that, I don't even think he's a Muslim, but he's just totally in the pocket of the Islamic groups in Michigan, whatever, would never deal with these things fairly. But it wasn't just him, it was every last one of them. And it over the years it seems clear, Qatar and Saudi Arabia have poured millions of dollars into the universities. I think it's very likely they've also bought the news agencies, because there's not even one guy ever, any single reporter who wants to deal with these things fairly. It's incredible. Anyway, all right, we got a lot of jihad here, David, so let's keep going. Oh, we got some in the United States. Shall we go to the United States? This is Mirsad Ramik. You may remember him from a few years ago. Um, Goodness. Oh, there he is. Mirsad Ramik is from Kentucky. He's from Bowling Green, Kentucky. And he is actually a Bosnian. But in any case, he came here as a refugee when he was 11 years old in 2001. And then when he was 24, in 2014, he was at Western Kentucky University. And he and a couple of his buddies, they left the university and went to Syria to join ISIS. Mm-hmm. And it's worth noting in that connection that there were 40,000 Muslims from 120 countries who went to Syria and Iraq to join ISIS in 2014 and 2015. And
hold on. You're saying tens of thousands of Muslims from completely different parts of the world all came up with the same idea about joining ISIS?
40,000 Muslims from 120 different countries.
Huh. That's weird. They all misunderstood Islam in exactly the same way.
Yep. Pretty amazing. So Mirsad Ramik has just been convicted, and he is going to serve some time in prison, and then will be deported, and he's been fined $25,000 for targeting U.S. forces while he was fighting for ISIS, bragging on social media about firing anti-aircraft weapons at airplanes. He also encouraged people on social media to join ISIS and wage violent jihad. But David, the Lexington, Kentucky Herald Leader, says that he actually had a difficult transition to life in America. He was bullied, and the schools did not offer him sufficient support. So that's reason for anybody to go jihad. Am I right?
Yeah, and it's just weird that people go through that, just decide to do exactly what Islam commands to do against the unbelievers. It's weird.
It is. It's an ongoing mystery. But you see, he was bullied in school.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing with all the lunatics and so on. Well, all these crazy people who go and then they stab at people's necks while screaming Allahu Akbar, and they're like, "Oh, this person was mentally ill." It's like a pretty characteristic feature of really mentally ill people is that they're pretty unpredictable, and yet all these guys are just predictably doing exactly what the Muslim sources say you should do. So I don't know, it's weird. So it's weird kind of insanity.
There really needs to be a new category in the DSM for this kind of insanity that always works itself out the same way.
Sudden onset jihad syndrome. We already named
it. So we got Abdullah Haji Zada. And he is in Oklahoma. He's an Oklahoma boy. He's out there in Oklahoma, and he's from Afghanistan originally, however. He's only 18 years old. He's a refugee from Afghanistan, and he is a lawful permanent resident of the United States, but he has pled guilty this past week to a criminal charge of knowingly receiving, attempting to receive, and conspiring to receive a firearm and ammunition to be used in a federal crime of terrorism. He received 2 AK-47 rifles and 500 rounds of ammo, and he was planning to use them to carry out a jihad massacre along with his buddy Nasir Ahmed Tawhidi. He was going to attack voters on election day on behalf of ISIS. And so he is also looking at... he's going to be sentenced as an adult and will likely be deported back to Afghanistan after he serves his time. Which is a good thing, because a lot of these guys, especially in Britain, they serve their time and then they end up just walking the streets as if nothing happened. And it's actually
the government says, well, we can't send them back because they might be frowned upon back home.
Yeah. I couldn't believe the one. I think we talked about it. But do you remember that guy from Pakistan? And he was a pedophile. He was involved with a child sexually, and he actually was not deported because the British authorities in that case said, "Oh no, his family will be so upset that he's a pedophile. He'll have trouble back in Pakistan." Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm sure they'd probably be upset. Why didn't you marry her?
Yeah, and so, hey, we have to just let him keep molesting girls here. It's a small price to pay for him not suffering the consequences of his actions.
That's Keir Starmer's Britain for you. All right, we got another from America. This. Oh, she's gone. Let me get her back.
Please, leave her gone.
She escaped on me. No, you gotta love that. You gotta love her. This is Kadra Issa, and Kadra Issa is from Somalia.
Hang on, Robert.
Yeah,
I'm not normally in favor of the burqa. I'm going to make an exception, just this once.
For the charming Kadra Issa. I don't know. I think she's really should be the mascot of this week.
I'm just saying, it looks like it's a weird combination of looking completely psychotic and everything else, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't want to see you looking at me, lady.
Well, that's probably true, because the U.S. actually has just put. They don't know where she is, David, so she could knock on your door or my door tonight, and. Anyway, the U.S. government just put a $5 million reward for information on her whereabouts. She is Somali. She lived for a while in the Netherlands, and so the news reports, of course, call her Somali Dutch, as if she's in any way Dutch, when she herself would reject the idea that she's Dutch. See, it's funny how the Western papers and Western authorities, they want to insist that these jihadis are citizens of their countries that they live in, when they themselves would reject that idea and say, I'm a citizen of the Ummah. I'm not a Dutch woman. Anyway, Kadra Issa is a citizen of the Ummah. She's with ISIS, like the others that we've talked about in this show. She was part of a women's battalion, and she led a unit that violently enforced Sharia on women. She also is accused of ordering physical punishments and killings, and of being responsible for the kidnapping of 2 children.
Quite the resume.
So why is she kidnapping children, David? What's that all about?
I mean, pretty common thing. You take some kids and turn them into jihadis, and
you can do that. You can also ransom them.
Take them slaves. Yes,
use
make them
them
slaves.
as slaves.
You have a variety of options. You have a variety of options. Take them, ransom them, so you get money, or make them your slaves, or just raise them to be jihadis.
Yep. Or free them if it's prudent to do so and for the benefit of Islam. These are all delineated in chapter 47, verse 4 of the Quran, as well as in Islamic law. And there she is, Kadra Issa. She is on the lam right now, ladies and gentlemen. And she is, nobody knows where she is, so if she shows up in your town, then buy her a beer. And anyway, there's a $5 million reward out for her, so...
Here's the rough part, Robert.
Yes.
She seems pretty darn recognizable. She would stand out like a sore thumb.
You
or
think?
A sore face. But they're not going to catch her unless someone informs on her, because she's just going to go around in a burqa for the rest of her life and be a devout Muslim. And it would be Islamophobic to go looking for her under those burqas.
Yes, she could be in any Islamic community anywhere in the West, covered up. No Western authorities would dare to check, and nobody's going to turn her in from the Muslim communities, and so she can pretty much act with impunity. So that's Kadra Issa. All right, let's go to some stupid infidels, shall we? There's never a shortage of stupid infidels.
You could have an entire show called Stupid Infidels.
Yes. As a matter of fact, this one is, I think, well, they're also egregious. But anyway, we're talking about cases in the United States. So this is Nejwa Ali. And Nejwa Ali, this is actually an infidels who finally wised up story. But Nejwa Ali was a Department of Homeland Security official, and she was in charge of vetting asylum seekers. Okay? And so you can see her there with the Palestine flag on her t-shirt and the keffiyeh, which is sort of a jihadi sign, jihadi symbol. Anyway, on October 19th, 2023, 12 days after the Hamas massacre of 1,200 Israelis, she was put on administrative leave pending an investigation. And this is because she was openly pro-Hamas, and she wrote on social media, she put up pictures of Hamas terrorists parachuting in to the music festival where they massacred all the Israelis who were there. She wrote F Israel and any Jew who supports Israel and so on. So why is this a stupid infidel story if she was put on leave and then ultimately fired? Because she was put on leave on October 19th, 2023. And then on February 10th, 2025, she was fired. But between October 19th, 2023 and February 10th, 2025, she did not show up to work because she was suspended, but she was on full salary. So she got, in other words, what is that, 14 months, 16 months of paid vacation, and then was finally terminated after 16 months of paid vacation.
Must be nice.
Well,
Jihadis get paid. Jihadis get paid. I don't. What?
It's the it's the duty of the.
If I stop making videos, I'm just doomed.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I got to write books, man.
If you stop writing books, you starve.
I will go out on the street corner and say, "Hey, you spare some change?" Or like Bogart in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Can you stake a fellow American to a meal? Of course, he was in Mexico when he was saying that. But anyway, you got to see that movie.
Hey, this would actually be a funny little commercial for you, Robert. We get you one of those signs that we wear over you, and it says, "We'll expose jihad for food." And have you stand on a street corner and and record and see what happens.
It would be interesting to see if there'd be any reaction from anybody driving by. But it reminds me of you on the street in full Islamic regalia when we were filming Islamicize Me. And David's there with a kufi and a kaftan and a machete, a big machete, and waiting for the bus. Nobody batted an eye.
I was so sleep deprived, I wasn't even thinking about it. I'm in full Islamic gear, sitting at a bus stop with a giant Damascus dagger in my hand. I was so sleep deprived. I'm just like, oh, cool. To be a good shot here. I'll go sit in here with it. And we got a guy recording across the street and stuff like that. But yeah.
It was great. It was huge.
Classic.
It was really classic. I mean, you talk about American authorities being asleep about jihad. That's it right there, Anyway, this is actually a non-jihad story. This is a jihad-adjacent story, we could say. Let me get this guy's picture up because he's another charmer. This is a non-Muslim leftist named Cody Balmer. He's got the beard, but he's, as far as I know, not a Muslim. And Cody, he's got the crazy eyes, but Cody Balmer is the guy who tried to burn down Governor Josh Shapiro's governor's mansion in Pennsylvania during Passover. And the family was in there about to have Passover Seder, and the house is burning down. And it was Cody Balmer. And this has been widely reported and discussed, but completely swept under the rug, was that Cody Balmer said he did it. He said that he did it because of what Shapiro wants to do to the Palestinian people. So he did this on behalf of the Palestinian jihadis. But even Shapiro says, when he was asked about it, he says, no, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to discuss that. And it's been completely dropped from any of the discussions of this issue. And
Well, I mean, by the way, that is a serious issue that you have this alliance of the jihadis with other groups and so on, and you work together, you adopt the same causes and so on, and then these guys start acting the same way.
Yep.
Because the same characteristics. If you form one big alliance, the people in a group over time try to demonstrate, just psychologically, they demonstrate their value to the group. And you do that by being the champion of whatever the group values and so on, and becoming more extreme in being the champion of what that group values and so on. So if you're in a group that's, from the river to the sea and this and that, then that's what you do.
A few years ago, Hezbollah was training the drug cartels in northern Mexico. And so suddenly these Mexican politicians that were opposing the cartels were ending up beheaded. And this had never been seen in Mexico before. But it was a technique that Hezbollah taught them, because they read it in their book. All right, I got a story here. This is a wild story, David. You strapped in for this one? You got your seatbelt on?
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're not going to believe this. I'm just going to read this story. The European Union is preparing to provide 10 million euros in funding, that's about 11 or 12 million dollars, for a scientific research project aimed at highlighting the contribution of the Quran and the Muslim religion to European civilization. Did you get that? 10 million euros to a project aimed at highlighting the contribution of the Quran and the Muslim religion to European civilization. The starting point of the project's initiators is that the influence of Islam on European culture is greatly underestimated. And they say this: our project is built on the conviction that the Quran has played an important role in the formation of medieval and early modern European religious diversity and identity, and continues to do so.
Here's what's weird, Robert.
Yes, sir.
If they were actually going to be honest and do good, solid research and say, here, we're investing $10 million to get unbiased, renowned historians to accurately assess the impact that Islam has had on European civilization, for good or for bad. We're just going to, these are the ways that Islam, the Quran, and the teachings of Muhammad have impacted Europe, whether good or bad. And we're going to spend all this money and all this research, and we are going to submit our results to a candid world so that everyone can be better informed on this issue. I would 1,000% be behind it. But we know what's coming.
Yes, we do.
We know the report that, did you know that Islam gave Europe democracy, and they invented the cell phone, and they invented ice cream, and they invented bratwurst, and they invented everything you like about Europe. Europe didn't have that until the Quran came, and that's when they got it. And it's going to be a bunch of that nonsense. Why? We've seen that over and over again. We've seen that. They had that at the they had that at the big Museum of Natural History in New York. They came up with this big exhibit called it was 1,001 inventions supposedly that came from. I started looking them up. I could not find one that was accurate. I went through like 10 of them. It was supposedly all these things that came from Islam. I looked them up. As soon as I looked it up, it would take me like 5 minutes of research. And it was like instantly. It was instantly. I posted one, just completely crushed them. They came at me so hard. They apparently had contacts at YouTube that were getting that banned just for talking about it. You're using photographs of our exhibit. You can't tell. So yes, I can. I'm allowed to do stuff for purposes of criticism and commentary. Mm-hmm. They came so hard with lawyers and everything like that that by the time I actually won, I did not continue, because I was like, okay, I'm going to post this, and they're going to come after me every time like this. I just don't feel like doing it. But it's going to be that same situation. And they were saying everything that Islam invented cameras and
Hmm.
flight before the Wright brothers. All this just complete nonsense. And again, you literally had to just go online and look up what the real source was, and they were wrong every step of the way. It's a version of what I call Islam's 99-1 rule, where if you spout complete nonsense, but 99% of the people are just going to mindlessly believe you and not go look it up, it's in your best interest to just keep lying to people,
Yeah.
because you're building a bigger and bigger mob, and that as the mob gets bigger and bigger, it becomes easier and easier to silence the one here and there who actually investigates these things. And so yeah, you look forward to more of that with this. But I mean, it's a weird situation where we've been saying it before. It's kind of a situation where you guys get what you ask for. If you want to praise Islam and say it's so great and get more of it, it sucks for the people who don't want that you're oppressing, and they're gonna be the real victims, because the politicians, Robert, they live in their posh neighborhoods. They're
Hmm.
safe. They live in the safe neighborhoods. It's the regular people whose daughters are getting horribly raped by
Hmm.
these guys.
The funny thing is, well, there's several things about this. I actually have a book coming out next year, um, probably about 10 months from now, called The Tragedy of Islam, Failure and Excuses. And it's all done. And it's got a section in there about these bogus Muslim inventions business. And I pointed out in there that these things only make the situation worse if anybody stops and thinks about it. If Muslims really invented flight before the Wright brothers, why weren't they flying before the Wright brothers? We have to believe that they invented all this stuff and then walked away and didn't do anything with it, didn't develop it, and it was left to the West to pick it up and do something with it. And so then you got to wonder, well, why did they fail so thoroughly to develop all these things they supposedly invented? And so it just postpones the problem. But
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah, so it's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing with in the realm of science and with philosophy. Basically, as Islam expanded, they they entered territories that had learned things and had books on things and so on. And the same thing would happen over and over again. The you'd have Muslims who are interested. Hey, we've got works of philosophy here. They would have to go to the caliphate and say, "Can we read these works of philosophy, examine them, and see what use they might be to the ummah?"
Hmm.
And they would be given permission. And so for a while they would go in there and they would start doing science, and they'd be making instruments and so on, or they'd be doing philosophy for a while. And what would happen is you would get some benefits out of it for a while. If you're coming up with medical instruments, that can be helpful in like battle and stuff like that, being able to, patch people up and so on. So this can help with your jihad. What they would inevitably find is, as people dug deeper into things, into philosophy or into science or so on, it ultimately clashed with Islam, and Islam would just suffocate these things. That's why you have these things springing up and then they disappear in Islam. But then people point back to them and say, "You see, Islam is so great. It's this fount of learning." No, you guys invaded places, took stuff, didn't know how to use it because it conflicted with Islam, and then you trashed it. And what's the takeaway method? I mean, what's the takeaway message? Islam just uses stuff for Islam, and once it finds out it doesn't fit, it gets rid of it. So all this stuff you're saying, "Oh, Islam's going to contribute in all these different ways. It's going to make all this, do all these great things." No, if you let Islam take over, it's going to suck up everything it wants that it can use, and then whatever does not fit with Islam, it's going to completely destroy it. That's the pattern that we see throughout history, and anyone
Yep.
who doesn't see that is completely clueless.
Let me ask you one more question about this before we move on. Do you think that this 11, $12 million project to show how much Europe owes to the Quran and Islam, do you think it's going to make even one mention of how the European states were actually defending themselves and trying to stave off Islamic conquest for over a millennium?
No, I would say that's the main thing. I mean, Europe had to like arm itself, especially the places along the lines where they're going to be invaded be invaded and so on. They had to defend themselves. So the real impact of Islam would be, I mean, things like the Crusades and so on, people arming up and heading over to other
Mm-hmm.
parts of the world and so on. So that's the real impact of Islam. Or not even in Europe, the United States. They had to start coming up with the Marines and so on to deal with Muslim pirates, and so that's the real impact of Islam on Europe.
But that's
But
not going to
yeah,
be
no,
in
that
this.
won't be mentioned at all.
Not a chance. All right, so what we got here, we got more stupid infidel. Well, there's never a shortage, David, of stupid infidels. We got in Belgium. We have the secularist
Where is
activist.
where Islam invented the waffle?
Yes, exactly, and beer. The beer is very good in Belgium. They're famous for it. And my friend, I think you know Andrew Bostom, wrote the Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism and Legacy of Jihad. Anyway, very valuable collections of essays and studies on these issues. And he and I were in Belgium for a conference many, many years ago. And he said, while I'm here, I want to make sure to have waffles and beer because Belgium is famous for both. But we ended up being busy the whole time, and some of the dinners were planned as part of the program and so on. So on the very last day, he had them both together because there wasn't any more time. And so,
Waffles and beer. Nice.
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's stronger.
I was on my way. I was on my way to Ethiopia for a conference once, and I had this big layover in Germany. And they had a little bar there, and I was like, oh, I could get an actual German beer, right? And so I go up and I say, I'll have a German beer. And they go, would you like a small or a large? And I go, a large. And they brought me this giant beer that was like 2.5 feet tall.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
what? Yeah.
Oh yeah, man! I remember speaking in Germany. I was there for I guess about a week, if I recall, or maybe longer, and speaking every day around midday. And then when we were done, it was 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would say, and now we would go to the Biergarten. And the rest of the day, we would just be knocking back the beers and talking it all over. And anyway, I was a younger individual there. Yeah.
Gonna be
Yeah.
sad to see it go.
It's going to be tough for the Germans when they outlaw alcohol. But anyway.
Well, we want no more beer. We just want the jihad and the rape of all the girls.
Yes, that's what they're working for. All right, we got in Belgium, we have the secularist activist Maroufi Fadila, who is the co-founder and director of the European Observatory of Fundamentalisms and the Secular Cafe in Brussels, also in Paris. And she recently reported this past week, she said, in Belgium, a town organized a parade of St. Nicholas who threw candy. This was around Christmas time, obviously. St. Nicholas appears, he's throwing candy. That's part of the story of St. Nicholas, that he threw gold into the windows of some people who were in need. And that's why he's associated with gift giving and why we have the whole legend of Santa Claus and so on. Anyway, so they had a parade for St. Nicholas, threw candy, and one day when he threw the candy, some people there in this Belgian town threw stones back. And so now the municipality has decided to cancel the St. Nicholas celebration so as to avoid offending Muslims in the future.
Got to do it. I mean, I hear stories like that every Easter, every Christmas.
Yeah, there you go. And we have somebody, I got to deal with this because somebody says here, St. Nicholas from Turkey. St. Nicholas was not from Turkey. St. Nicholas was from Asia Minor, which was part of the Roman Empire at the time that he lived. He was a Roman citizen. He had nothing whatsoever to do with the Muslim invaders who established Turkey 1,000 years after he died. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, no, I just have to point out nothing good ever came out of Turkey except Hatun and AP after some serious changes took place.
My family's from there.
Oh, okay.
My grandparents were exiled from Chesme on the coast for declining the invitation to convert to Islam.
Based.
Anyway.
That's what they call it, based.
It was deeply based. All right, we got In Austria, they have new political parties. 2 new Muslim political parties.
Awesome.
Yep. And that is a photo of the hijab-wearing candidate of the, let's see, Sali Atia is her name, and she is a representative of the Social Austria of the Future party. And she was running for, let's see, in Vienna in the municipal elections. But what's interesting is that the poster says the new Vienna mayor, even though she wasn't running for mayor. But that clearly indicates that she has greater plans. She's planning to be the mayor of Vienna, and then on from there, perhaps the first Muslim prime minister of Austria. Who knows? The sky's the limit. But there's not just... Yeah?
I was just going to say it's kind of weird because according to Islam, women are intellectually deficient. And according to the Hadith, Muhammad said, a nation that has woman as its ruler will never succeed. And so this could be a really smart, diabolical form of jihad where they get Muslim women to become leaders of countries, knowing that will cause the countries to crumble, according to Islam.
There you go. There were, in any case, I think I actually already mentioned that there are 2, not just 1, but 2 Muslim political parties now active in Austria. All right, let's go to Malaysia. And in Malaysia, we have this structure, which is a Hindu temple that is 131 years old. It was built in the late 19th century, and it is called the Dewi Sri Pathrakialaman Temple. Pardon me, all you Malaysians who are watching, forgive me for mangling the name, but in any case, the Kuala Lumpur city authorities have temporarily paused the demolition because of controversy over it, but the plans are to demolish the 131-year-old temple so that a mosque can be built there. So, David, we've covered this issue before, but just for the sake of those who may have missed it, why can't they just build a mosque somewhere else? Why do they have to have this temple demolished?
Islam loves either taking over people's places of worship or building a mosque over top of it. That way, and it's I pointed out before, and it's in your book. It's in your book, The History of Jihad, that they also loved like smashing the idols and so on, and sprinkling there. That way, it's like they're constantly reminded of how they have conquered this other place. They walk on them and as they go to the mosque. So so it's the same thing with Hagia Sophia. It's the same thing with the Kaaba. It's the same thing with all kinds of Hindu temples that they built mosques over and so on. They love, look, we're stronger. It's a constant reminder, we're stronger than them. We took their place of worship. But then they lose their minds if that's ever reversed.
Well, yeah, because...
And then they start screaming bigotry and Islamophobia, and we're victims here.
Islam must dominate and not be dominated. The Islamic flags are green because Islam is in a perpetual springtime. It's always growing. It never contracts. It never retreats. And so yes, they scream if it's reversed because Islam always has to grow at the expense of the non-Muslim communities, never the other way around. And speaking of which, David, I got a story out of Benin. Now, do you remember? I think it was a year or 2 ago. In Benin, there was the very first story of jihad activity, and we discussed it here on a show. And it was the very first time. I've been covering jihad daily at jihadwatch.org for, 23 years, every day, never missing a day. And I never saw a jihad story out of Benin until a couple of years ago. And I had to add a new category because I got categories for all the different countries in Jihad Watch. Had to add the new category for Benin. Anyway, okay. So, all that is the backdrop. Here's the news story from a few days ago. The Al-Qaeda affiliate Jama Nusrat ul-Islam wal-Muslimin said it killed 70 soldiers in raids on 2 military posts in North Benin. And then it went on to say, and I thought this was wild, this is a Reuters story. It said the West African state and its coastal neighbor Togo have suffered a series of attacks in recent years as groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda have expanded their presence beyond the Sahel region to the north. So not only now do we have Benin, we have Togo, which has also not been mentioned in previous jihad reports. And now it looks as if there is steady jihad activity in both, when it used to be not a place where jihad activity was going on. So what is happening here? Can you explain this to those of us who are here, including Golden Man from Benin?
Well, Golden Man, glad it's not something we heard from Mohammed Hijab, because it would be Golden Shower Man. The only people who understand that, guys, that's not me being weird. As Mohammed Hijab sent us dozens of messages talking about golden showers, and we're like, this is a Dawa guy. This is like a representative of a religion. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's as soon as the jihad kicks off, it's sort of you can't stop. It's just relentless, and it gains momentum, and every successful attack is an encouragement, and then other people start making excuses for it and showing how tolerant they are, and it just keeps coming at you.
So we had jihad in Nigeria. We've covered at great length here over the years, and there was relentless jihad in Nigeria. There still is, as a matter of fact. I've got several stories out of Nigeria this week. Death toll rises to 56 in jihad raids in Benue State. A Nigerian bishop came to the United States, testified before a House committee, talking about an Islamic agenda to homogenize Nigerians, that is, to make them all the same, make them all Islamic. And that's been going on for years, but now it's spreading beyond Nigeria into other areas of West Africa. And so we have Benin, we have Togo. It's just going to keep on going from there. And they never stop unless they are forcibly stopped. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and another thing we've pointed out before that you've got this line. I forget what the name. The line has a name. I forgot what it is. But there's a line that goes around the Muslim world where it's mostly Muslims on one side, mostly non-Muslims on the other side. And this is in Africa. It's over in India and so on. But Muslims want to keep pushing that line further and further and further. And when you hear about this ongoing jihad and genocide in Nigeria, trying to wipe out the Christians, in people's minds, it's Nigeria. It's a fight going on in Nigeria when it's just Christians being slaughtered over and over and over again. But people don't realize the bigger implications. Like, even if you said, we don't care about Nigeria, well, you should, you evil scumbag. But supposing you just didn't care about Nigeria at all, Nigeria is not the end goal. What if they were to push through Nigeria? Guess what? They don't stop there. That they're going to have a ton of momentum if they were able to completely take over Nigeria through jihad. And once they push through, guess what? They're going to the rest of Africa. They're not stopping there. It's like dominoes. Guys. And
they're already advancing.
While they're knocking over another domino, and setting the stage in other areas, because they're preparing. They're preparing to just go all through Africa.
That's it. So yes, they're already active in Somalia, active in Mozambique, and it's only spreading from there. Hey, I meant to actually get to this, but I got distracted when we were talking about my friend Kadra Issa. Kadra, if you're watching tonight, I hope you're having a fine evening, and I hope they find you soon. But in any case, they said how she was Somali Dutch, and there's a similar story about Iran and how the Islamic Republic of Iran has been accused of working with Swedish gangs in order to kill Jews in Sweden and attack Israeli interests in Sweden. All right? And here are the leaders of the Swedish gangs in Sweden that the Islamic Republic of Iran is accused of working with. They're the Swedes.
Those are the most Swedish-looking dudes I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. Those Swedes are named Rawa. My goodness. Where is it? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Rawa Majid. That's one of them. But there's another. The other guy. Oh, here. I'm sorry. Had the wrong story open here. Okay. Now we're on the track, David. Rawa Majid and Ismail Abdo. And they are the Swedes who lead criminal gangs in Sweden that have been accused of working with the Islamic Republic to kill Jews in Sweden. But they are actually likely to be citizens of the global Ummah and would never say they are Swedish. It's only Westerners who insist that they are Swedish.
Well, I mean, the blonde hair and blue eyes are dead giveaway.
Yes. Yes. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah. There was unrest in Pakistan this week. And in Pakistan, actually, there was quite a lot of Pakistan, but there was mob violence in Pakistan, which is pretty common. And they were burning KFCs. And they were burning KFCs not because they were militant vegans, but because they were protesting the U.S. support of Israel's action in Gaza. David, what does KFC have to do with Israel's action in Gaza?
I have no idea. I'm guessing. I mean, I've seen boycotts of various businesses, and a lot of times it's just like they're not divesting, or because they have a franchise in Israel, therefore any of the other franchises in other places are fair game. But I have no idea there.
Yeah, in this case, actually, there's none of that. It's just that KFC is a firm based in America, and America is an ally of Israel. Therefore, they burned KFCs.
Well, no, then it makes perfect sense.
So, you've talked about this several times from the past, that we are often accused of engaging in collective punishment because we speak about Islam, even though we're not speaking about Muslims at all. They claim if you are speaking about Islam in connection with the misdeeds of particular Muslims, then you're engaging in collective punishment. But actually, the burning of KFCs because of Israel's actions in Gaza, that is collective punishment in its essence, is it not?
Oh, and it's pretty standard. I mean, someone in one country drew a cartoon, we'll just slaughter someone over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a random person.
Indeed. And then it's the old propaganda tactic, accuse your enemy of what you yourself are guilty of doing. Oh, hey.
And by the way, I just want to point out, you find the exact same thing in the Muslim sources, where a Jew would play a practical joke on a Muslim woman, and then they would all have to be slaughtered. The entire tribe would have to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
And then they would have to work out a deal and say, oh, but we have an alliance with this tribe, and he would say, okay, we'll just leave.
So what do you think of this guy? This guy was in New York City the other day at a pro-Hamas, anti-Israel demonstration. And I don't know if you can see it very clearly in the picture, but he's wearing what was described as a mock suicide vest with these various little gadgets on his chest and wires and so on. And in the video you can see him looking down, checking the wires and so on. He doesn't seem to have been wearing an actual suicide vest, but just a pretend suicide vest. But what do you think would be the idea of doing that?
You can have a couple. You can have a couple of ideas. You can have one. You could just be basically terrorizing people. So you have people who want to terrorize people by actually killing and slaughtering, but you have other guys who just pretend. Another possibility is there's what's called suicide by cop, where you're trying to get killed, and that you actually believe you'll be a martyr if you do,
Hmm.
but just by putting on something fake. If you don't have any any actual explosives and so on, you can go commit suicide by cop, and then you go spend eternity deflowering virgins.
And one other possibility is that it's fake and it's openly known to be fake. And so anybody who complains, they say, "What are you being so Islamophobic for? This is just a political statement." And then the next guy who wears an actual suicide vest in Times Square and blows himself up is able to get through because everybody assumes it's fake. All right. We got super chats here, David. We got Holy JO3 or Job or whatever says Masjid Mutalfornia, founded by Demi Baft, located in Mubalahaville. You must know what that means. I don't.
Mubahalaville, that's the Muslim prayer duel. That's been going on. The Muslims have been challenging each other left and right to prayer duels because they're all calling each other liars. And so you got that, and then Masjid Muta.
Is that the dispute between Daniel and Jake?
I don't know if they're doing it. It wouldn't surprise me, but Muhammad Hijab's ex-Mutawife is he's saying she's just a liar and a stalker. She's saying, "What are you talking about? We were married and you just used me for sex, and you said I'm just your hotel wife." So as far as the Hotel California, they clearly switched that to Masjid Mutaifornia and Mubahalaville, yeah.
Okay.
So they're making fun of Muhammad Hijab and his hotel wives.
What does that woman think Islamic marriage is? That's all it is.
No,
What was she expecting?
No. It's so she's what's called a misyar wife, and that's where she is renouncing some of her privileges, like Sauda. She agreed to be a secret second wife, so she would not be known to Muhammad. Muhammad Hijab's main wife would think that he's monogamous with her when he's got these secret second wives going around. And we know there were multiple versions because they talked about she talked about the same sheikh. The same
what did
sheikh
she expect him to do? He used her for sex only. Well, that's what she's for. That's all a wife is in Islam.
He's wrong here. He's wrong, I would have to say.
Okay.
If you are a misyar wife, you're supposed to clarify what rights you are renouncing in the marriage, right? And so what she was going to agree to was, I am not going to be known to your other family. So I'm going to be a secret second wife. So she renounced. So she agreed that she was not going to be known as his wife. What she didn't agree to was he was only going to use her for sex and not provide for her in any way. So he's not going to pay anything. He paid the mahr at the beginning, but other than that, he's not giving her a dime. He's not paying for her living. He's not paying for food. He's not paying for anything. And he's saying that she's just his wife in the hotel, and he's just meeting for sex, but he's not providing for her at all. And he was saying, he was guilt tripping her and saying, but think, if I have to provide for all these women around me, how am I going to be able to do my dawah and stuff? So it was guilt tripping her. She tried to handle it behind the scenes. They just attacked her and called her a liar and stuff like this. And she eventually went public with it. And Muhammad Hijab is just, no, she's making all this stuff up when she's out there calling. Fine, let's get together for Mubahala. Let's have this prayer duel where we call on Allah to curse the liar. And even though Muhammad Hijab in the past has been quick to call people out for Mubahala, I challenge you to Mubahala, bro, Mubahala. He is running scared from this lady. And it's like, what are you scared of? If she's some random stalker who's making all this stuff up, as you claim,
then what's the big deal?
Why aren't you? Yeah. Why are you running? Why are you running, bro? Why are you shaking? So that's what's going on in the world of dawah right now, Robert.
It's a beautiful thing. I had no idea. All right, we got Aisha's goat. Muhammad inspected boys' genitals to decide who lives or dies. Yes, he did. Ibn Kathir al-Bidayah. Yes, that's absolutely true and multiply attested. If the boys had reached puberty, they would be killed. If they had not, they would not be.
See,
Apu.
Robert Spencer admits that Muhammad did exist. I'm taking that clip right now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm cutting this clip. Robert Spencer admits Muhammad existed.
I think I'll take the opportunity to clarify one more time. Very important to know what the Islamic texts say about Muhammad and what he said and did, because Muslims believe those things to be true and act upon them. But whether these have any historical value or not is a completely different question. Apu Baker, Al Puff Daddy, blessings of risen Lord for you. Dr. Wood and Mr. Spencer, thank you, and also to you as well. And the same gentleman says, your opinions on aligning with Muslims on issues like the Maryland case in which parents, Muslim and Christian, are objecting to LGBT books in schools. That's fine by me as far as I'm concerned. The more the better. If you've got allies, then use them. But the problem is a lot of people, a lot of Christians tend to think that we're going to all be friends now, and that we're going to work together against secularism and atheism and so on, and the corrosive influence of this immorality in schools. The alliance is of only limited value, and the Muslims will never regard you as equals, and as soon as they're done attaining their goal, they will throw you away. So you have to be very careful and aware of the limitations of the alliance. What do you think, David?
Yeah, it's. I mean, at the end of the day, if I agree with a Muslim on something, I agree with a Muslim on something. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's. Yeah, I don't have a problem agreeing with a Muslim on something that I happen to agree with him with. But as far as forming alliances, you got to understand how they use those alliances. I mean, just look at it, right? Who have they been aligned with for years? The far left.
Yes.
The same people propping up the same LGBTQ community. That's how you end up with like queers in Palestine for someone. And then as soon as you start going after their kids, then nope, we want to switch sides. And we're like, oh yeah, they're on our side. No, they're on whatever side is beneficial to the Muslim community at any given time. Mm-hmm. And the moment you become an inconvenience, they'll turn on you too. So it is it's dangerous to form alliances with groups that ultimately want to violently subjugate everyone and are just using various groups as they go along to get what they want.
Yes. All right, KJ 139 PS. Not condoning jihad, but please take this attack with a grain of salt. Such attacks usually happen when militant Hindu BJP ruling India is losing the public opinion. Look into Uri attacks. I'm skeptical. I don't think that jihad is something that is imaginary or is a PR thing. That's something that we see all the time. There is an ongoing undercurrent of people who say the Jews or the U.S. government or George W. Bush or somebody did 9/11. It's really very common. People don't really believe that the jihadis are jihadis. Unfortunately, there are real jihadis out there, and they are active. David?
Yeah, and so so you got to go with you basically got to go with probabilities on these issues. It's always possible that it's some other group trying to frame Muslims because they want to set them up to do something and so on. Guess what? It's possible that it's a bunch of Eskimos, a bunch of rogue it's possible. You have to go with what's probable. So when there's so when you hear about, hey, there's a bunch of guys and they're telling people to drop their pants so they can check whether they're circumcised or not, and they're quizzing them on Muslim trivia, and it's as Robert pointed out, it's the exact same method we've seen over and over and over again. Possible that it's the CIA? Yes. Possible that it's aliens? I guess. What's the best explanation for the evidence? Well, this fits a pattern that we see over and over and over again. So I'd have to say by far the best explanation is the obvious one.
Precisely. Okay, Some Bible Summary says, my favorite weekly program. Thanks, guys. Love in Christ. Plug website summaries of the Bible and Quran. Some Bible and some Quran in progress. Not familiar with them, but what do you think, David?
Before I plug, I would have to actually check that out, because how do I know you're not a complete lunatic spouting complete nonsense?
Yeah, we don't know, but we love you anyway.
But people saw it here, so people can check it out and then give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on what they see.
There you go. Apu Baker, Al Puff Daddy, Dr. Wood, Mr. Spencer, and your opinions. Why do moderate Muslims cling to their beliefs and refuse to condemn Islam? Pride, denial, hidden motives? How about very great personal advantage? Telling people what they want to hear about how Islam is really peaceful? and it's just misunderstood, confusing people, acting on behalf of the jihad by making people complacent who are not Muslim, and thinking that there's not really a threat because most Muslims are these wonderful, reasonable moderates we keep seeing on TV. Things like that. What do you think, David?
Yeah, people. I mean, if you're from a moderate mosque with a moderate imam and so on, you can actually believe this stuff. And you hear about this jihadi doing something, and that's not what my imam says. In other words, they can make the exact same mistakes that non-Muslims make about Islam. And oh, well, I have so many nice Muslim friends, and they're nice, and therefore that the guy screaming Allahu Akbar while slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah, he can't be real Islam. So people within the religion can make that exact same mistake.
That's it. Rick Newton says, in the end, heaven will have no death or unalivers or lying media or abuse of any kind. Oh, there's a day coming soon. Even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. Amen. And our friend APLPD, opinions on Islamic housing suburb in Texas. Legal? What do you think, David? I don't know enough about it to say.
Haven't looked into it enough. Me and AP been planning on doing a show about it, but yeah, we're waiting till we actually know what we're talking about, and we don't yet.
Tezbot, hi guys. Do you think most Muslims know all about jihad but are in denial? How is UK doing re-Islamic takeover, in your opinion? Just as David was just saying, there are a whole lot of Muslims have no idea about jihad because they recite Quran in Arabic without knowing Arabic. So they don't know what it says. They depend 100% on their imams to tell them what Islam is all about. And if the imam's not talking about jihad, then they don't know about it. And so you could be a completely sincere, devout, prayerful, regular mosque-going Muslim and think Islam is a religion of peace. It's entirely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and Muslims can give the impression that they're more knowledgeable than they actually are, because that's the impression they gave me way back in the day, and it's because they do know their basic practices, like their prayers and going to the mosque and fasting during Ramadan and dressing a certain way. And so you look and you say, oh, that's someone taking their religion very seriously. And so that's what I thought until I started interacting with them and learning about Islam. Then I'd ask them questions, and they almost never had any clue what I was talking about. I can sit there and quote 20 verses of the Quran to them. They had never heard any of this stuff before. And so what you find in reality in Islam is you end up with a kind of a two-tier system where you either learn everything and you're a scholar, or you just shut up and listen to what your scholar tells you. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
And how is UK doing re-Islamic takeover, David?
Looking pretty bad. It's still at the end of the day, it's still a small percentage of the population. I think around 6.5% or something like that. But they have large percentages of the populations in the major cities. So they're going to the major cities. So you go out into the rural areas and stuff, you have no Muslims out there, but you have cities taking over large areas of cities. At any point, Great Britain or any other place could wake up and they would have massive majorities. And so they could, in theory, deal with this at any time. It's just, there's no sign of that happening. There's no sign of that happening in the UK. Indeed. It's you've got the entire government, you've got all the journalists and everything. Everyone's on one side as far as, please, sir, subjugate us more. Subjugate us. Please, sir, can you subjugate us more? So It's not looking good. And I've pointed out before, I don't believe that Europe is actually going to be subjugated. I believe eventually, if Muslims push hard enough, you're going to get a backlash. The point is, the longer people put off dealing with Islam, you could have dealt with Islam completely peaceful. Completely peacefully, and just by being sane and not being a complete lunatic, you could have dealt with it. The longer you push it, the further you push this off into the future, the more it indisputably is going to require, and you're going to get it's going to be a civil war. It's going to be a massive civil war, and it's going to be a bloodbath. And the more likely you are to get brutal rulers, because if you get a bunch of people in a panic state and they're still in the majority, but a small majority, because these other guys are pressing, they will vote some really brutal people into power to deal with their problems for them. Yep. And so that's what you are going. So this is the amazing thing. I'm the one trying to avoid the future bloodbath by saying deal with it while you can deal with it peacefully. I'm the bad guy. The good guys are the ones who say, no, let's keep bringing in more of it, more of it, more of it. Yeah, more rape, more jihad until there's a backlash and everyone kills each other. And they're the good guys. Anyway.
That's right. And they're in charge. Robert asked David to add beatbox to colorized poems. I don't know. What do you think, David?
As long as you keep a good meter to it, I can beatbox the stuff.
I don't know if it's all. The meter can sometimes be a little ragged, but anyway, it's the.
One day, matter of fact, I'll let you know. One day when you've got a good cadence to it, stuff like that, I'll let you know, and then you can repeat it, and I'll beatbox to it.
Okay. It's a deal. Not a Simich gives the symbol. Thank you, Not a Simich. Mother Queen says, so now we can pay a jizya here too? Nice. GBU.
That is nice.
Oh, God bless you. Gotcha. Okay. I'm slow on the uptake here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I guess they do. Anyway, we have Jeremy. Jeremy says, tell them to hit the like button. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. What does that mean?
What's that?
Is it just you hit the like button and there are more likes? Does that result in something?
The algorithm picks it up. If the more people click on the like, the algorithm picks up on any sort of interaction. So people commenting, people posting comments in the chat, people sending super chats, people sharing the video, all those count as interactions, and the algorithm is picking up on how many interactions the video gets, deciding how much to recommend this video. So any interactions help.
Thank you, David. I had no idea. How do you like that? Hit the like button, folks. Come on, let's go. Okay.
No, you
Broken.
You got to say
yes?
something. Yeah, you got to come up with creative ways to say wage jihad on that like button, or Quran 434 that like button, and then strike it.
That's good. That's good. I'll think on that. Let's see. Yeah. You could 47 for it, but then I guess you won't have it later.
Yeah, strike at the neck of that like button.
Broken teeth in Uhud. Robert, I bet if they gain enough population in Texas with projects like Epic City and all, they're going to ask for... Oh, yeah, that's common. It's just like everywhere else. You want to know what the U.S. and Britain will look like if this keeps going and is unchecked? Look at India and Pakistan. And you've got partition. It all used to be one country, and now it's India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. You look at India, and it's still got a sizable Muslim population, and there are riots on a regular basis. There are attacks. This is what the U.S. and Britain are looking at in the future, just the way it always is. Loaves of bread. Sajid reverted reading a Western politician Quran. This is your friend, just somebody you're dealing with. Am I right?
Yeah, we just did a live stream going through Sajid's attempt to respond to the Islamic dilemma. It did not go well for him. It doesn't go well for any of them.
What is the Islamic dilemma exactly?
It's basically Muslims think that the Quran says that the previous scriptures have been corrupted. And so what we do is we go through all the verses in the Quran that talk about the previous scriptures. They all affirm the inspiration and the preservation and the continuing authority of the Torah and the gospel. So we then put this into a dilemma. We say, okay, there are two possibilities here. Either Jews and Christians have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, or we don't. It's one or the other. If we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, Islam is false because Islam contradicts what we have. So if we've got the word of God, Islam is false. The alternative is if we don't have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, Islam is false because Islam says we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. So if we have the word of God, Islam is false. If we don't have the word of God, Islam is false. Either way, Islam is false. Therefore, Islam is false. So we, a group of us decided to really go hard with this argument this year. We've been going through the Quran verse by verse, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, finding everything the Quran says, going through commentaries and so on. And we've been challenging Muslims to respond. On Fridays, we've been going live on God Logic's channel, and it's any Muslim can can come into the discussion and challenge us and show us where the Quran says these things, and they just fail over and over again. It's somehow in their heads that the Quran says this, and they just have no clue what they're talking about. And so, anyway, we're having a lot of fun with this argument this year.
That's beautiful. All right, Jeremy says, call your next book Qurantradiction. My next book is actually called Holy Hell, Islam's Abuse of Women and the Infidels Who Enable It. And it'll be out in the fall, probably in October or thereabouts. And watch for that. And then the one after that is also finished. It's called, as I mentioned before, The Tragedy of Islam, Failure and Excuses, about how Islam is bad for individuals and societies.
Darn, I thought you were going to have a book called The True Story of Diha al-Kalbi.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that one after.
Muhammad's lover who role played as the angel Gabriel.
It is a great story. All right, the Prophet of Convenience says, you see, Islam did invent flight. What do you call the Buraq? Muhammad flew all the way to the moon on Buraq. Islamophobes get debunked again. You see? All right. Some Bible summary. They changed my college and Billy Graham's and Todd Beamer stormed Flight 93 mascot name from the Crusaders to the Thunder to not offend Muslims. Yeah, very common. People are ashamed of the Crusades now. They don't know what the Crusades were all about. They should read the history of Jihad. Mark H.
There could be a silver lining if your team is now called the Thunder. You can use AC/DC's Thunderstruck as your entrance song, and that will kind of make up for things because that's awesome.
I don't know. Will Robert preach a sermon at Hagia Sophia when AP retakes Constantinople? I'll certainly go, I'd visit, but I'm not authorized to preach a sermon, as I am not a clergyman.
AP has been vowing that as soon as he's baptized, he is going to retake Constantinople.
Nice. If he retakes Chesme, that's where my family's from. I'd like to get hold of
I will have him add that to the list.
Ancestral villa. All right, Zedhead, YouTube recommends the Prime Minister of India's posts to me for some reason. And he said that he condemns the attacks, and all of the comments were just people telling him to take action like Israel. All right.
Keep in mind, this is a similar. Matter of fact, whenever we have these attacks in India, it's always in my head. It's like this is the same thing Israel has to deal with. Just like you're going to keep randomly killing people until you deal with these guys brutally and make them stop.
Yes.
And they're still gonna come at you, but you just can't let them keep killing your people all this time.
Exactly. D. Boudreau says the mob in Pakistan actually killed a KFC staffer, 45-year-old Asif Nawaz. Lots of people on social media condemning the whole boycott thing. After that, filming themselves with KFC meals. Good.
Was that a Muslim dude? Hey D, hey D, you don't need to send another super chat. I'll be checking, but was that a Muslim dude?
Asif could be.
Asif
could
Nawaz,
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got Villainous SSB, support Fatih Okodoro, polemicist in Nigeria. Not familiar with him. If you can send me info at director@jihadwatch.org, I'd love to see it. $1 from Eileen Sloan. Thank you, Eileen. Christian Gadfly says, the obvious explanation in the 50s, the CIA and Mossad made a time machine and went back to 7th century Arabia to create a violent, idiotic religion. That's it, all right. That's you cracked the code.
D says not sure. Yeah, they probably didn't have any information, so
okay.
Wouldn't know. But Asif is a Muslim name. Nabil's middle name was Asif.
Oh, there you go. So, I mean, there's no reason why not. He's just a guy with a job, and they kill him because he's at a job in a place that they identify with the infidels. FWTC Smiley Face says Australia is having election day soon. Just praying that the wrong person doesn't get voted in. The wrong people are already in big numbers, too.
Yeah, you're a little late for getting the wrong people in.
EANDM Creations. Have you received any of our jizya from YouTube yet? Actually, I think I did, oddly enough, the first month.
That's cool, because we were wondering about that.
I really, I'm very puzzled by all this, because, of course, they were asking about the website at the same time, and they flagged it for hate, which, of course, just means we were talking honestly about jihad. And
That's as hateful as it gets.
so I don't know if it's. I mean, it seems like it's to me. It's only a matter of time. But so far, they haven't flagged it. So
That's
anyway,
good.
thank you
That's
for all
good.
your support.
I was
And we'll.
I was kind of 50-50 on whether you would ever see a dime of your super chats.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they did. I mean, of course, it's around the time now that they should be sending another. We'll see. AP the Cake Human says Constantinople will return to us. I don't know. That must be something from you. Oh, Cake Human,
Yeah.
Catechumen.
Yeah, Catechumen. Yeah.
He's a-
I started calling him Kate Chuman, like a girl, and then people started calling him Cake Human. Yeah.
Okay.
People are rude. They have no respect for these titles.
It's a beautiful thing. Bo Rudder says, I thought KFC went halal. Yeah, it did. I think that was in Canada, was it not? But not necessarily.
A while back.
Oddly enough, it's probably assumed to be halal in Pakistan. But actually, sometimes you never know. A lot of times they're stricter in the West than they are in their own countries. FWTC smiley face. I know the wrong people are in, just hoping that they actually get voted out this time. I hope so too. Certainly.
Hey, look, hey, Robert. A little side note on
Yes.
AP when he started going to the Orthodox Church. He's kind of
Yeah.
telling the guy, hey, he's basically saying, hey, I'm not sure about stuff. I don't know what to believe, but I'm kind of drawn to this. But the guy explained it to him in terms of kebabs. He's like, yeah, it's like you're going by a kebab shop and you smell the kebabs and you're like, might want to try those kebabs out because that's what you're kind of getting a whiff of things. That's funny. It's just cracked me up that he was explaining
Yes.
explaining what's going on with AP in terms of kebabs.
The Orthodox Church as a kebab shop. When really it's euros. But anyway.
But it's
That's
funny.
the
He's speaking
Greeks.
the only language AP would understand.
There you go. Well, he's come to the right place. In any case, we have arrived also at the place where this is to end. Thank you all for being here. We'll be here next week, God willing, should there be any more jihad. And until then, as always, pray, hope, and don't worry.